The morning sun streamed through the large airport windows as 12-year-old twins Zara and Nia arrived with their mom. The girls bounced with excitement, their matching backpacks bobbing up and down as they walked. This would be their first flight as unaccompanied minors, and they'd spent days planning what movies they'd watch in first class on their way to visit their grandparents. "Do you have your books?" their mom asked, checking her watch. She had an important meeting in 2 hours and needed to drop them off with enough time to make it back across town. "Yes, Mom," the girls answered in unison, a twin habit they'd perfected over the years. The airport buzzed with activity. Business travelers tapping on laptops, families wrangling toddlers, and flight crews walking briskly toward their gates. The Williams family joined the premium check-in line, where Zara and Nia stood tall, feeling grown-up and important. When they reached the counter, a woman with a tight smile greeted them. Her name tag read, Patricia. "Good morning," their mom said, sliding 3 passports across the counter. "My daughters are flying as unaccompanied minors today. First class to Atlanta." Patricia tapped at her keyboard, her expression changing slightly. She glanced at the girls, then back at her screen. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Williams, but it appears there's been a change to your daughter's booking." "What kind of change?" their mom asked, her voice taking on the firm tone the twins recognized from when she negotiated business deals on the phone. Patricia continued typing, not meeting their eyes. "It seems the first-class cabin has been overbooked. Your daughters have been reassigned to economy seats." "That's not possible," their mom said, pulling out her phone. "I booked these tickets myself 3 months ago and received confirmation. First class seats 3A and 3B. Zara and Nia exchanged worried glances. They'd been looking forward to the spacious seats and special treatment. More importantly, their dad had specifically arranged for them to be in first class where flight attendants would check on them more frequently. Patricia's smile remained fixed. "I understand your frustration, but these situations sometimes happen. The computer shows the change was made last night due to operational needs." "Can I speak with a manager?" their mom asked, checking her watch again. "Of course, but I should warn you that the flight is quite full, and there's very little we can do at this point." Patricia picked up a phone and spoke quietly into it. Nia tugged at her mom's sleeve. "It's okay, Mom. We can sit in economy." "It's not okay," their mom whispered back. "Your dad paid extra to make sure you'd be well taken care of." A man in a dark suit approached, his badge identifying him as the duty manager. "Good morning, Mrs. Williams. I understand there's an issue with your daughter's seats." Their mom explained the situation while Zara and Nia stood quietly, watching passengers stream by. "I apologize for the inconvenience," the manager said in a tone that suggested he'd said these words countless times before. "Unfortunately, we sometimes need to make adjustments to accommodate certain passengers." "What certain passengers?" their mom asked sharply. The manager cleared his throat. "Loyalty members, last-minute business travelers. I assure you your daughters will be comfortable in economy. We'll make sure they're seated together." Their mom checked her watch again and sighed deeply. "This isn't right. But I have a meeting I can't miss." She turned to the girls. "Are you two okay with this? I can try to book you on another flight if you'd rather wait." "We'll be fine," Zara said, though disappointment clouded her face. "Grandma and Grandpa are expecting us today." Their mom nodded reluctantly. "All right, but I'm not happy about this, and my husband will definitely be hearing about it." The manager handed over the new boarding passes, row 23, seats E and F, middle and window. "We'll take good care of them," Patricia said, her professional smile back in place. "Unaccompanied minors are always a priority for us." Their mom knelt down to hug them both. "Text your dad when you board, okay? He'll want to know you're safe." She handed each girl a $20 bill for snacks. "Thanks, Mom," they chorused, tucking the money into their pockets. After their mom left, an airline employee clipped special tags to the girls' backpacks and led them through security. Other children with similar tags were guided to a special waiting area for unaccompanied minors. "Why do we have these tags if we're sitting in economy?" Nia asked the employee. "It helps us keep track of you," the woman explained. Someone will come get you when it's time to board. The waiting area had a small TV playing cartoons and a table with coloring books. Most of the other kids were younger than Zara and Nia. The twins sat together on a bench, their excitement dimming. Maybe economy won't be so bad, Zara said, trying to sound upbeat. Yeah, maybe, Nia replied, though neither of them believed it. A boy about their age sat down across from them. His tag showed he was headed to Chicago. First time flying alone? He asked. The girls nodded. Me too. My mom's super worried, but I told her it's no big deal. Where are you headed? Atlanta to see our grandparents, Zara answered. Cool, I'm visiting my dad. My parents are divorced. The three chatted until a different airline employee appeared at the entrance to the waiting area. Atlanta flight, Fun 1372. Passengers, please come with me. Zara and Nia gathered their things and followed the woman, who walked quickly through the terminal. We're in economy, Nia told her as they approached the gate. Seats 23E and F. The woman frowned and checked her clipboard. That's odd. I have you listed for first class. They changed it, Zara explained. They said it was overbooked. The woman seemed confused but didn't question it further. At the gate, a group of passengers was already boarding. The twins noticed several people in business attire being welcomed aboard. These are unaccompanied minors for the Atlanta flight, their escort told the gate agent. The agent glanced at their boarding passes. Row 23. You'll board with Group 4. But unaccompanied minors usually board first, the escort said, looking puzzled. First-class unaccompanied minors board first, the agent corrected. Economy boards with their assigned group. Zara and Nia stood to the side as premium passengers filed onto the jet bridge. They noticed two other children with unaccompanied minor tags being escorted to the front of the line. Why are they going first? Nia whispered. Zara shrugged, a knot forming in her stomach. Something didn't feel right. When Group 4 was finally called, the girls joined the line of passengers with carry-on bags and tired expressions. As they shuffled down the jet bridge, Zara pulled out her phone. I'm going to text Dad, she said. He should know about this. Her thumbs flew across the screen. Dad, they put us in economy even though you got first-class tickets. Row 23. Some other kids still got to be in first class, though. Everything else is fine. She hit send just as they reached the airplane door, where a flight attendant greeted them with a practiced smile. Welcome aboard, ladies. May I see your boarding passes? The attendant scanned their passes and looked at their tags. Her smile faltered slightly. You're unaccompanied minors in economy? That's unusual. They said first class was full, Nia explained. The attendant frowned. I see. Well, your seats are about halfway down the cabin on the right. Do you need help finding them? We can manage, Zara said politely, though her heart sank as she glanced toward the plush first-class cabin they passed by. Through the curtain, they could see the two other children being offered juice by a smiling flight attendant. One of the kids was even younger than them. The twins made their way down the narrow aisle, squeezing past other passengers who were stuffing bags into overhead bins. When they reached row 23, a man was already seated in the aisle spot. Excuse me, Nia said softly. We need to get to our seats. The man sighed heavily and stood up, barely making room for them to squeeze past. Zara took the window seat and Nia settled into the middle, their shoulders touching in the cramped space. I wonder if Grandma remembered to make her special cookies, Nia whispered, trying to find something positive to focus on. Zara nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She watched as more passengers boarded, the plane filling up quickly. Yet through the gap in the curtain, she could see empty seats in first class. Her phone buzzed with a reply from their dad. What? Are you sure? Let me make some calls. Dad's not happy, she told Nia, showing her the message. Nia's eyes widened. You know how he gets when he thinks something's not fair. Indeed they did. Their father, the CEO of a major tech company, was known for his calm demeanor in business, until he encountered injustice. Then he became an unstoppable force. As the final passengers boarded, the girls fastened their seat belts and prepared for takeoff. Neither of them knew that several miles away, Their father was already making a phone call that would change the course of their journey and spark a conversation much bigger than 2 seats on an airplane. The hum of the airplane filled Zara and Nia's ears as they settled into their cramped economy seats. The excitement they'd felt that morning had faded, replaced by confusion and a touch of sadness. Zara peeked through the gap in the curtain one more time, catching glimpses of the spacious first-class cabin where they were supposed to be sitting. "Stop looking," Nia whispered. "It'll just make you feel worse." Zara turned away from the curtain with a sigh. "I know. It's just weird. Why would they move us but not those other kids?" The man seated in the aisle spot next to them shifted uncomfortably, irritably, clearly not thrilled to be sitting beside 2 chatty 12-year-olds for the next 2 hours. A flight attendant walked down the aisle, checking that seatbelts were fastened and bags were properly stowed. She was different from the one who had greeted them at the door, older, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "Excuse me," Zara called out as the attendant passed. "We're supposed to be in first class. We have unaccompanied minor tags." The flight attendant paused and glanced at the colorful tags hanging from their backpacks. "That's odd," she said, frowning slightly. "Unaccompanied minors are typically seated in premium cabins for better supervision. Let me check with the lead attendant." She moved away, speaking quietly into her handheld radio. The twins exchanged hopeful glances. "Maybe they'll fix it," Nia whispered. A few minutes later, a different flight attendant approached, the one who had been serving drinks, in first class. Her name tag read, Diane. Unlike the other attendant, her expression was cool and professional without a hint of warmth. "You girls mentioned something about first class?" she asked, her voice low but clipped. Zara nodded. "Our dad booked us. In first class. We're flying by ourselves." Diane glanced at their boarding passes, which Nia held out hopefully. "I see you're in row 23, which is exactly where you're sitting," Diane said. "Your boarding passes are for economy, not first class." "But they changed it at the last minute," Nia explained. "The lady at check-in said first class was overbooked." "Well, I'm afraid there's nothing I can do about that," Diane replied. "The flight is full and we're preparing for departure. You'll need to remain in your assigned seats." "But we saw empty seats in first class," Zara pointed out. "And other kids with tags like ours are sitting up there." Something flashed across Diane's face, annoyance perhaps or discomfort. "Those children were assigned to first class," she said firmly. "Now please make sure your seatbelts are fastened and your tray tables are up for takeoff." With that, she turned and walked briskly back toward the front of the plane. The man next to them shifted again. "Tough luck, kids," he muttered, not unkindly. "Airlines pull this kind of thing all the time." Zara pulled out her phone again, ignoring the announcement about electronic devices. She quickly typed another message to their dad. "First class isn't even full. There are empty seats, and other kids with the same tags as us are sitting there." She hit send just as the announcement came to put phones in airplane mode. Reluctantly, she complied, wondering if her dad had seen the message in time. As the plane began to push back from the gate, Nia reached for her sister's hand. Despite their brave faces, flying alone was still a little scary, and the seating mix-up had only added to their anxiety. "At least we're together," Nia whispered, always the optimist. Zara squeezed her hand in agreement. Their twin bond had always been strong. They could practically read each other's thoughts sometimes, finishing sentences and sharing inside jokes that no one else understood. The safety demonstration began, with flight attendants demonstrating how to buckle seatbelts and use oxygen masks. The twins had seen it all before, but they watched anyway, having nothing better to do in their cramped seats. Across the aisle, a woman in a brightly patterned dress caught their eye and smiled sympathetically. Unlike Diane, her smile reached her eyes. "First time flying alone?" she asked quietly as the safety demonstration continued. The girls nodded. "You're brave kids," she said. "I didn't fly by myself until I was in college." "Our dad travels all the time for work," Zara explained, warming to the friendly stranger. "He says flying is safer than driving to the grocery store." The woman chuckled. "Your dad sounds smart. I'm Gabrielle, by the way. I'm Zara, and this is my sister, Nia. We're twins." Identical twins, Nia added, used to making the clarification. With their matching braided hairstyles and similar outfits, jeans and colorful t-shirts, the resemblance was striking. I guessed that, Gabrielle said with another warm smile. Where are you heading? Atlanta, to see our grandparents, Zara replied. They have a house with a big backyard and a treehouse our grandpa built. Sounds wonderful, Gabrielle said. I'm sure they're excited to see you. The plane continued taxiing toward the runway, the engines rumbling beneath them. The captain's voice came over the intercom, welcoming everyone aboard and announcing their flight time. 1 hour and 53 minutes to Atlanta. Zara tried to get comfortable in the narrow seat, her knees nearly touching the seat in front of her. It was going to be a long flight. Suddenly, a different voice came over the intercom. The lead flight attendant. Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay, but we're currently holding position on the taxiway. We should be moving shortly. Murmurs of discontent rippled through the cabin. Delays were always unwelcome, especially at the start of a journey. What's happening? Nia asked, peering out the small window, though there was little to see except the wing and the tarmac. Probably just waiting for clearance from the tower, the man in the aisle seat said, checking his watch with annoyance. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The plane remained stationary on the taxiway, engines idling. Passengers began to shift restlessly in their seats. A baby started crying somewhere behind them. The intercom crackled again. We apologize for the continued delay. We're working to resolve an administrative issue and should be on our way shortly. Thank you for your patience. Administrative issue? Gabrielle repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's a new one. Up in the cockpit, the captain was on the radio with the control tower, but the passengers couldn't hear their exchange. Whatever was happening, it was unusual enough to keep a fully loaded plane sitting on the tarmac. Another 5 minutes passed. The cabin grew warmer, and the air felt stale despite the ventilation system running. The baby's cries grew louder. Zara noticed increased activity at the front of the plane. Flight attendants were moving back and forth, speaking in hushed tones. Diane, the cool flight attendant from earlier, seemed particularly agitated. Something's going on, Zara whispered to Nia. As if on cue, a man in a suit that wasn't quite the same as the other flight attendants' uniforms appeared at the front of the economy cabin. He spoke briefly to Diane, who pointed down the aisle toward where the twins were sitting. The man nodded and began walking toward them, his expression serious, but not unfriendly. Passengers watched curiously as he approached, wondering what could be happening. Are you Zara and Nia Williams? He asked when he reached their row. The girls nodded, suddenly nervous. Had they done something wrong by texting their dad? I'm Anthony Reynolds, the regional customer service manager for the airline, he said, his voice low enough to provide some privacy, but still audible to nearby passengers. Would you mind coming with me for a moment? The twins exchanged worried glances. It's nothing to be concerned about, Anthony assured them, noticing their anxiety. We just need to discuss your seating arrangement. Relief washed over their faces as they unbuckled their seatbelts. The man in the aisle seat stood up with a sigh to let them out. Bring back some better snacks if you can, kids, he joked, trying to lighten the mood. As they followed Anthony toward the front of the plane, Zara noticed Diane standing near the galley, her expression now clearly uncomfortable. Other passengers watched curiously, wondering why 2 young girls were being escorted off the plane. Are we in trouble? Nia asked Anthony once they were in the jet bridge. Not at all, he said with a reassuring smile. Actually, we owe you an apology. There seems to have been a misunderstanding with your booking. Another man was waiting in the jet bridge dressed in the airline's ground crew uniform. His name tag identified him as Ricardo, station manager. Hello, girls, Ricardo said, extending his hand to each of them. I understand there was some confusion with your seats today. They put us in economy even though our dad bought first-class tickets, Zara explained. Ricardo nodded. Yes, we've been looking into that. It appears there was an error in our system. Your original booking was indeed for first class. So can we sit there now? Nia asked hopefully. Absolutely, Anthony said. In fact, that's why the flight has been delayed. We're making the necessary arrangements." The twins couldn't believe their luck. Just minutes ago, they'd resigned themselves to a cramped economy flight, and now they were being moved back to first class. "Your father called our executive customer service line," Ricardo explained. He was very concerned about the situation. Zara and Nia exchanged knowing glances. Their dad's very concerned tone was legendary in their household. Quiet, but intense, the voice he used when something truly bothered him. "He mentioned that you texted him about seeing other unaccompanied minors in first class while you were moved to economy," Anthony added. "That raised some serious concerns for us." The twins nodded, understanding washing over them. Their dad hadn't just been upset about the downgrade. He'd been worried about why they'd been singled out when other children weren't. "We're conducting a full investigation into how this happened," Ricardo assured them. "This isn't how we treat our young passengers, especially those traveling alone." A flight attendant appeared at the door of the plane, the older one with kind eyes who had first noticed their predicament. "We're ready for them now," she said with a warm smile. As they re-entered the aircraft, the atmosphere had noticeably shifted. Diane was nowhere to be seen. Anne and the lead flight attendant personally escorted them to the first-class cabin. "Here are your original seats, ladies," she said, gesturing to 3A and 3B, spacious leather seats with plenty of legroom and personal entertainment screens. The other children with unaccompanied minor tags looked up as Zara and Nia took their seats. One of them, a boy about their age, smiled and waved. "Can I get you something to drink before takeoff?" the attendant asked. "Orange juice, apple juice, water?" "Apple juice, please," they replied in unison, still processing the sudden change in their situation. As they settled into their comfortable seats, Zara couldn't help but peer back through the curtain at the economy section they'd just left. She caught Gabrielle's eye, who gave her a thumbs up and a wide smile. The man in the aisle seat looked up from his magazine, noticed them in first class, and nodded with what seemed like approval. An announcement came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we apologize for the delay. We're now ready for departure. Flight attendants, prepare for takeoff." As the plane finally began moving toward the runway, Nia turned to Zara. "Do you think Dad had something to do with this?" Zara grinned. "I know he did. Remember last year when that restaurant wouldn't seat us by the window even though we had a reservation? He didn't raise his voice once, but the manager was practically shaking by the end." The flight attendant returned with their apple juice in real glasses, not the plastic cups used in economy. "Your father must care about you very much," she said, as she handed them their drinks. "He does," Nia agreed. "He always says that how people treat you shows what they think of you, and everyone deserves to be treated with respect." The attendant nodded thoughtfully. "Your father sounds like a wise man. Enjoy your flight, girls. If you need anything at all, just press this button." As the plane accelerated down the runway and lifted into the air, Zara pulled out her phone to turn it back on once they reached cruising altitude. She couldn't wait to text their dad about what had happened. Little did they know that back on the ground, their father's phone call had set off a chain of events that would extend far beyond their single flight, and their story was just beginning to unfold. The sudden stillness of the aircraft was the first sign that something unusual was happening. Passengers who had been settling in for takeoff looked up from their books and phones, exchanging confused glances as the engine's steady roar quieted to a gentle hum. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking," a voice announced over the intercom. "We apologize for the delay, but we're currently holding position on the taxiway due to an administrative issue. We should be moving shortly. Thank you for your patience." In economy class, Gabrielle, the friendly woman who had chatted with Zara and Nia earlier, checked her watch with a frown. She had a connecting flight in Atlanta, and delays were never good news. "Administrative issue, what does that even mean?" muttered the businessman in the twins' former row, loud enough for those around him to hear. "Could be anything," replied an older woman across the aisle. "Weather, paperwork, mechanical check. On a clear day like today? Doubtful," he countered, peering out the window at the cloudless blue sky. As minutes ticked by, passengers grew increasingly restless. The cabin temperature rose slightly, making the already cramped economy section feel even more uncomfortable. A baby began to cry a few rows back, its wails punctuating the murmur of discontent spreading through the cabin. Near the front of economy, flight attendants huddled in the galley area, speaking in hushed tones and occasionally glancing toward the back of the plane. Their usual professional composure seemed slightly rattled. "Something's definitely up," Gabrielle said to no one in particular, watching the flight crew's unusual behavior. "They look worried." The intercom crackled to life again. "We apologize for the continued delay. We're working to resolve an administrative issue and should be on our way shortly. Thank you for your patience." "That's the exact same announcement as before," the businessman pointed out irritably. "They're not telling us anything new." What the passengers couldn't see was the flurry of activity happening behind the scenes. In the cockpit, Captain Reynolds was on the radio with the control tower, his expression growing increasingly concerned. "Tower, this is National 1372. We've been instructed to hold position for a customer service issue. Can you confirm?" National 1372, Tower confirms. "Stand by for further instructions. You've been requested to maintain position by your company operations." The captain exchanged a puzzled look with his first officer. In his 27 years of flying, he'd never delayed a flight for a customer service issue after pushing back from the gate. "Must be something serious," the first officer commented, checking the time. "We're burning fuel just sitting here." In the first-class cabin, the atmosphere was markedly different. Flight attendants moved with purpose, tidying up the already immaculate space and rearranging items in the galleys. The lead flight attendant, a woman named Beverly with 20 years of experience, spoke quietly into her handheld radio, her expression serious. The other unaccompanied minors watched the activity with wide eyes, sensing that something unusual was happening, but not quite understanding what. "What's going on?" A young boy around 9 years old asked Beverly as she passed his seat. "Just a small delay, sweetie," she assured him with a practiced smile. "Nothing to worry about. Would you like some more juice while we wait?" Meanwhile, at the front of the plane, Diane, the flight attendant who had been dismissive of Zara and Nia earlier, stood nervously by the main cabin door. She jumped slightly when it unexpectedly opened, revealing the stern face of Ricardo Martinez, the station manager. "Diane," he said, his voice low but firm, "we need to talk now." She followed him into the jet bridge, where Anthony Reynolds, the regional customer service manager, was waiting. The door closed behind them, but through the small window, passengers in the first row could see the intense conversation taking place. "It's about those two girls," whispered one passenger to his companion. "The ones who were just here in economy." "What girls?" his seatmate asked, having boarded too late to witness the earlier incident. "Twin girls, around 12 years old. They were sitting in economy, but they kept saying they should be in first class. Looks like they were right." Back in the jet bridge, Ricardo was making the severity of the situation clear to Diane. "The father of those girls is the CEO of Horizon Technologies," he explained, watching her face pale slightly. "He's on the phone with our director of customer experience right now, demanding to know why his daughters were moved from first class, while other children weren't." I didn't know," Diane stammered. "I was just following the gate assignment. Patricia made the change, not me. And you didn't think to question why two unaccompanied minors were suddenly in economy when our policy clearly states they should be in premium cabins whenever possible?" Anthony asked, his tone making it clear he found her explanation lacking. "There will be a full investigation," Ricardo said firmly. "For now, I need you to switch positions with Lisa from the domestic lounge. She'll take your place for the remainder of this flight." Diane's eyes widened. Being removed from a flight was a serious matter, practically unheard of for reasons other than illness or emergency. "But this isn't a discussion," Ricardo cut her off. "Mr. Williams has specifically requested his daughters not interact with you again during their journey." Inside the plane, the minutes continued to tick by. The delay had now stretched to 20 minutes, and passengers were becoming increasingly agitated. The baby's cries had intensified, and several people were repeatedly pressing their call buttons, demanding updates from the already stressed flight attendants. In the economy cabin, theories were spreading like wildfire. "I heard someone important is coming on board," said one passenger. "No, it's a security issue," countered another. "My cousin works for the airline and they only hold planes on the taxiway for security or mechanical problems." "Then why aren't they making us go back to the gate?" asked a third, logically. Gabrielle remained quiet, watching the activity at the front of the plane with interest. She had noticed the twins being escorted forward earlier and wondered if their situation had something to do with the delay. In first class, Zara and Nia sat wide-eyed in their spacious seats, not fully comprehending the commotion they had inadvertently caused. Beverly, now assigned as their personal attendant, hovered nearby, ensuring they had everything they needed. "Are we in trouble?" Nia asked her quietly. Beverly smiled warmly. "Not at all, sweetheart. In fact, quite the opposite. You were right to speak up when something didn't seem fair." "Is that why the plane isn't moving?" Zara asked, peering out her window at the stationary tarmac. "Let's just say some things are being sorted out," Beverly replied diplomatically. "But don't worry about that. Have you decided what movies you'd like to watch during the flight?" The cabin door opened again and Ricardo stepped back onto the plane, followed by a new flight attendant, a woman with a friendly face and salt and pepper hair. Diane was nowhere to be seen. Ricardo made his way directly to the twins' seats, stopping beside them with a professional smile. "Zara and Nia, I wanted to check on you one more time before we depart. Is everything satisfactory now?" The girls nodded, slightly overwhelmed by all the attention. "Good," he said with a nod. "This is Lisa. She'll be taking care of the first-class cabin for the rest of your flight. If you need anything at all, she's here to help." Lisa smiled warmly at them. "It's a pleasure to meet you both. I'm looking forward to making your first solo flight a memorable one, for all the right reasons." The intercom crackled once more. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We apologize for the extended delay. We've resolved our administrative issue and have been cleared for takeoff. Flight attendants, please prepare the cabin." A collective sigh of relief swept through the aircraft. The total delay had stretched to nearly 30 minutes, an eternity in the carefully choreographed world of commercial aviation. As the plane finally began to move toward the runway, a flight attendant appeared beside Gabrielle in economy. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said quietly. "We noticed you were speaking with the twin girls who were seated here earlier. The lead flight attendant would like to know if you'd be willing to move to an empty seat in premium economy for the duration of the flight, as a thank you for your kindness to them." Gabrielle blinked in surprise. "That's very generous, but not necessary. I was just being friendly." "We insist," the flight attendant said with a meaningful look. "Sometimes a simple act of kindness makes all the difference." In the cockpit, Captain Reynolds was finally receiving clearance for takeoff. "National 1372, you are cleared for takeoff on runway 24L. Wind is 270 at 5 knots. Cleared for takeoff, National 1372, he responded, advancing the throttles and feeling the satisfying push as the aircraft began to accelerate. As the plane raced down the runway and lifted into the sky, passengers settled back into their seats, the delay already becoming a story they would tell friends and family upon landing. "You won't believe what happened on my flight today." In first class, Zara and Nia watched through their windows as the ground fell away beneath them, the city growing smaller until buildings looked like toys and cars like ants. The initial drama forgotten, they were now simply excited for their visit with their grandparents. "Do you think Dad will be mad when we land?" Nia asked her sister, a touch of worry in her voice. Zara shook her head. "No way. He'll be glad we told him what was happening. He always says we should speak up when something doesn't seem right." "Yeah, but he also says we shouldn't make a fuss about small stuff," Nia pointed out. "This wasn't small stuff," Zara replied with the certainty of someone who had inherited their father's strong sense of justice. "It wasn't fair that we got moved when other kids didn't." Beverly approached with a tablet in hand. "Would you girls like to order your lunch now? We have several options today." As the twins perused the menu, selecting chicken pasta for Zara and a vegetable curry for Nia, They had no idea that 30,000 feet below, their father was just returning to his board meeting, having set in motion events that would extend far beyond their single flight. In the economy cabin, Gabrielle, now comfortably settled in a spacious premium economy seat with a complimentary glass of wine, took out her phone and opened her social media app. She worked as a journalist for an online news site, and her instincts told her there was a story here worth sharing. She began typing. Interesting situation on my flight today. 2 young black girls were inexplicably downgraded from first class, while other children weren't. After they spoke up, the entire plane was held on the tarmac until they were returned to their rightful seats. Someone important must have made a call. She paused before hitting post, considering the potential implications. After a moment's thought, she saved the draft instead. She'd want to get more details before sharing this publicly. Perhaps she could speak with the girls at baggage claim in Atlanta. Meanwhile, in the cockpit, Captain Reynolds was making notes in the flight log about the unusual delay. His 27 years of experience told him that this incident would not end when the plane landed in Atlanta. Something significant had happened, and in the age of social media and instant communication, these things rarely stayed contained. He was right. By the time National Airways Flight 1372 touched down in Atlanta, the story of the twins' seating reassignment and their father's intervention had already reached the airline's corporate headquarters. An emergency meeting had been called, and the company's PR team was on high alert. What had begun as a seemingly routine seating decision had escalated into something much larger, a potential public relations crisis that could impact the airline's reputation and bottom line. And it all started because 2 12-year-old girls refused to accept that they were being treated differently from others, without a good reason. As the plane taxied to the gate in Atlanta, Beverly knelt beside the twins' seats. "We'll be arriving shortly," she told them with a warm smile. "Since you're unaccompanied minors, I'll be escorting you off the plane first and directly to your grandparents. They've already been notified of our arrival." "Thank you," Zara said, politely. "Sorry about all the trouble." Beverly shook her head. "You didn't cause any trouble. You stood up for yourselves, and that's something to be proud of." As the aircraft approached the gate, none of the passengers, not even Zara and Nia, could have predicted how this seemingly small incident would snowball in the coming days, eventually leading to changes that would affect airline policies nationwide. Now though, the twins were simply looking forward to seeing their grandparents and telling them about their eventful journey. It would make for quite a story. One that began with an unexpected downgrade and ended with a lesson about the importance of speaking up when something doesn't seem right. The warm Atlanta sun bathed the arrivals area in golden light as Zara and Nia rushed into their grandparents' waiting arms. After the drama of their flight, the familiar comfort of family felt especially sweet. "There are our traveling girls," their grandfather exclaimed, wrapping them both in a bear hug that smelled of his signature cologne. "How was the flight?" The twins exchanged glances, silently debating how much to share. "It was interesting," Zara finally said, a master of understatement. Their grandmother, always perceptive, raised an eyebrow. "Interesting how? Did something happen?" As they walked to the parking garage, the girls recounted their experience, the unexpected downgrade, the confusion when other children remained in first class, and the dramatic delay on the taxiway after their father intervened. "They brought us juice in real glasses," Nia added, clearly impressed by this detail, "and the flight attendant said we were brave for speaking up." Their grandfather's expression had grown increasingly serious during their story. He had experienced enough in his 70 years to recognize what might have been happening, but he kept his tone light for the girls' sake. "Well, I'm proud of you both for handling it so well," he said, loading their suitcases into the trunk of his car. "And I'm not surprised your father stepped in. He's never been one to let unfairness slide." What none of them knew was that at that very moment, their story was beginning to spread far beyond their family circle. In the baggage claim area, Gabrielle, the journalist who had been seated near the twins in economy, was on the phone with her editor. "I'm telling you, Rich, there's something here," she insisted, watching the crowds of passengers gathering around the carousels. Two young black girls downgraded while other kids stayed in first class, the airline holding an entire plane on the taxiway to fix it after their CEO father called. That's not just a travel hiccup, that's a story. Her editor sounded skeptical. We need more than speculation, Gabby. Do you have any proof this was about race? Not explicitly, but the pattern is suspicious. And I'm not the only one who noticed. I overheard other passengers talking about it too. If you can get statements from the airline or the family, then maybe we have something. Otherwise, it's just another air travel complaint story. Gabrielle sighed, scanning the thinning crowd. She had hoped to catch the twins and perhaps get their grandparents' contact information, but they had already left. I'll see what I can dig up, she promised before ending the call. She pulled out her phone and opened the draft social media post she'd written during the flight. After a moment's consideration, she hit publish, adding a simple question at the end. Was this a simple mix-up or something more concerning? Air travel equality. It was a small pebble dropped into a vast digital ocean. Neither Gabrielle nor the Williams family could have predicted the ripples it would create. Back in the city they'd departed from earlier that day, Lawrence Williams was sitting in his home office on a video call with his wife, who was at a conference in Tokyo. The girls texted me when they landed, he assured her. They're with your parents now, safe and sound. And this seating issue? She asked, concern evident even through the slightly pixelated video. You really think it wasn't just a mistake, Lawrence? Ran a hand over his closely cropped hair, a gesture his wife recognized as a sign he was choosing his words carefully. I don't know for certain, he admitted. But when our daughters tell me they were moved while other children weren't, when first class wasn't even full, it raises questions I can't ignore. His wife nodded. Though half a world away, they were perfectly aligned on this point. As parents of black children, they had learned to be vigilant about situations that didn't add up. What did the airline say? I'm meeting with their XE. Cutive team tomorrow morning. The CEO will be on the call. Her eyebrows rose. The CEO? That's unexpected. Apparently, holding a plane on the taxiway gets attention, Lawrence said with a slight smile. Our corporate account probably doesn't hurt either. Keep me posted. I wish I could be there for the meeting. I will. Get some sleep, it must be late there. After ending the call, Lawrence checked his email one last time before bed. Among the usual work correspondence was a message from an unfamiliar address. G. Rodriguez, metronewsonline.com. The subject line read, Inquiry regarding incident on National Airways Flight 1372. Lawrence's pulse quickened as he opened the email. Dear Mr. Williams, my name is Gabrielle Rodriguez, a journalist with Metro News Online. I was a passenger on today's National Airways Flight 1372, seated near your daughters before they were moved back to first class. I witnessed the confusion regarding their seating and the subsequent delay while the situation was rectified. As someone who reports on issues of equality and consumer experiences, I found this incident potentially newsworthy. Would you be willing to discuss what happened and your perspective on why your daughters were initially downgraded when other children remained in first class? Any information you provide could be on the record or background at your discretion. Sincerely, Gabrielle Rodriguez, Senior Reporter, Metro News Online. Lawrence leaned back in his chair, surprised by how quickly the story had found its way to the press. His first instinct was to ignore the email. He was a private person by nature, despite his high-profile position. But something made him hesitate. If there was a pattern of unfair treatment happening at the airline, staying silent wouldn't help change it. And if it had been an innocent mistake, perhaps shining light on it would ensure more careful procedures in the future. He forwarded the email to Donna, his head of PR, with a short note. Thoughts on this? Meeting with airline execs tomorrow morning. Call me. Meanwhile, Gabrielle's social media post was gaining traction. What had started as a simple observation had been shared hundreds of times in just a few hours. People began adding their own stories of perceived discrimination in air travel, and soon the airline's social media team noticed the emerging trend. At National Airways headquarters, The night shift social media manager escalated the situation to his supervisor, who immediately alerted the PR crisis team. By midnight, the airline had issued a brief statement. National Airways is aware of concerns raised regarding a seating reassignment on Flight 1372. We take all customer complaints seriously, especially those involving our younger passengers. We are investigating the matter thoroughly and will address any issues identified. National Airways is committed to fair and respectful treatment of all passengers. The carefully worded statement did little to stem the growing online conversation. By morning, several news outlets had picked up the story, and the hashtag #National Airways Fail was trending in multiple cities. As dawn broke, Lawrence's phone rang. It was Thomas Chen, the director of customer experience he had spoken with the IO previous day. "Mr. Williams, good morning. I hope I'm not calling too early." "Not at all," Lawrence replied, already dressed and reviewing his notes for their upcoming meeting. "What can I do for you?" "I wanted to touch base before our call. Our CEO feels very strongly about addressing this situation properly and would like to suggest we meet in person rather than via video." Lawrence raised an eyebrow. "In person? The meeting is scheduled for an hour from now." "Yes, sir. Actually, our executive team is already en route to your office, if that's acceptable to you." Our CEO felt this matter deserved more personal attention. The unexpected escalation surprised Lawrence. Either the airline was genuinely concerned about making things right, or the social media firestorm had them in full damage control mode. Perhaps both. "That would be fine," he agreed. "I'll let my team know." When Lawrence arrived at his office, 30 minutes later, Priya was waiting with an update. "The National Airways team is already here," she informed him. "Their CEO, Chief Operations Officer, General Counsel, and Thomas Chen. They're in the main conference room. Also, Donna's here, along with Harrison from Legal, as you requested." "Thank you. Any word from that reporter?" "Donna has been in touch with her. She's holding off on publishing anything until after your meeting with the airline." Lawrence nodded his appreciation and headed to the conference room. As he entered, 5 people rose to greet him. "Mr. Williams, thank you for meeting with us on such short notice," said a tall woman with silver-streaked hair. "I'm Elizabeth Taylor, CEO of National Airways." After introductions were complete, they all sat down. Lawrence noted the serious expressions around the table. This was clearly not a routine customer service issue for them anymore. Elizabeth began. "Mr. Williams, first and foremost, I want to apologize for the experience your daughters had on our flight yesterday. It falls far short of the standards we set for ourselves, particularly when it comes to our youngest passengers." Lawrence nodded but remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "We've conducted an initial investigation into what happened," she went on. "What we've found is deeply concerning to me, both as CEO and as a person." Thomas Chen, the customer experience director, opened a folder in front of him. "With your permission, I'll share what we've learned so far." Lawrence gestured for him to proceed. "The gate agent who made the decision to move your daughters, Patricia Whitman, has been with National Airways for 22 years. When questioned about the incident, she claimed it was a routine reassignment due to weight and balance issues on the aircraft." Lawrence frowned. "Weight and balance? For 2 12-year-old girls when other children remained in first class?" "Exactly," Thomas agreed. "It didn't make sense to us either. Upon further investigation, we discovered this wasn't the first time Ms. Whitman had made such reassignments." Elizabeth took over. "Mr. Williams, in the past year, Ms. Whitman has reassigned 16 unaccompanied minors from premium cabins to economy. Our data analytics team looked for patterns in these reassignments, and the results are troubling. 15 of the 16 children reassigned were either black or brown. Only one was white." A heavy silence fell over the room. Lawrence felt a familiar knot in his stomach, the same one he'd experienced when reading his daughter's text message. "We've also reviewed security camera footage from the gate area," Thomas added. "While there's no audio, the body language and interactions visible in the video are consistent with your wife's description of what happened at check-in." Lawrence took a moment to process this information. "What actions are you taking?" Elizabeth straightened in her chair. Ms. Whitman has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. We're also conducting a comprehensive review of all similar incidents across our network to determine if this is an isolated case or a systemic issue. The airline's general counsel spoke up for the first time. Mr. Williams, we want to be transparent with you. This incident has the potential to become a significant public relations issue for National Airways, but our primary concern is addressing the underlying problem and making sure it doesn't happen again. Lawrence appreciated the directness. I'm less concerned about public relations and more concerned about ensuring other children don't have similar experiences. My daughters were lucky. They had a father who could intervene. Not everyone has that privilege, Elizabeth nodded solemnly. We couldn't agree more. That's why I'd like to propose something beyond just addressing this specific incident. She outlined a plan that included mandatory unconscious bias training for all customer-facing staff, a review of policies regarding unaccompanied minors, and the formation of a customer advisory board focused on diversity and inclusion. Additionally, she continued, we'd like to invite you to join this advisory board. Your perspective as both a business leader and a parent would be invaluable as we work to improve. Lawrence hadn't expected this turn in the conversation. He glanced at Donna and Harrison, who both gave subtle nods of approval. I'd be willing to consider it, he said cautiously. But I'd need to see concrete commitments and timelines for implementation. Of course, Elizabeth agreed readily. We'll have a detailed proposal to you by the end of the week. The meeting continued for another hour, with both sides discussing specific changes to airline procedures and training programs. By the end, Lawrence felt cautiously optimistic that something positive might come from his daughter's uncomfortable experience. As the National Airways team prepared to leave, Elizabeth asked for one more moment of Lawrence's time. There's something else you should know, she said once they were alone. A journalist from Metro News Online has contacted our media relations department about this incident. I believe she was on the same flight as your daughters. Gabrielle Rodriguez, Lawrence confirmed. She contacted me as well. How do you plan to respond? Lawrence considered the question carefully. I believe in transparency. If this is a pattern, it should be brought to light so it can be addressed. But I also want to acknowledge genuine efforts to make changes. Elizabeth nodded. I respect that approach. For our part, we plan to be forthright about what happened and what we're doing to fix it. We won't hide behind corporate speak or deny there's an issue. After the airline executives left, Lawrence met briefly with his PR director and lawyer to discuss next steps. They agreed that he would speak with Gabrielle, focusing on the facts of what happened and the airline's commitment to making changes. That afternoon, Gabrielle's article was published. Airline Faces. Questions after black twin girls downgraded, while other children remained in first class. The piece was balanced, outlining the incident while including statements from both Lawrence and National Airways about the steps being taken to address potential bias. It ended with a broader look at similar incidents across the airline industry and the challenges many travelers of color faced. The article quickly went viral, sparking conversations across social media platforms and news outlets. Other passengers from the flight came forward to corroborate the story, including the businessman who had sat next to the twins in economy. 3 days later, National Airways released a more comprehensive statement, acknowledging that their investigation had uncovered concerning patterns in how some passengers were treated. They announced a series of concrete steps they would be taking, including the creation of the Customer Advisory Board Lawrence had agreed to join. 2 weeks after the incident, Lawrence received a video call from his daughters at their grandparents' house. They were due to fly home the following day, on a different airline, as Lawrence wasn't quite ready to trust National Airways with his children again, despite their promises. Dad, we're famous, Nia exclaimed as soon as the call connected. Grandma showed us the article about what happened on our flight. There were over 10,000 comments. Lawrence smiled at their excitement. Well, I wouldn't say you're famous, but your experience has definitely started some important conversations. The airline lady called Grandma yesterday, Zara added. She apologized again and said they're changing their rules because of us. That's right, their grandmother confirmed, appearing in the frame beside them. They're implementing new procedures for handling unaccompanied minors, including documentation requirements for any cabin reassignments. So we helped make things better? Naya asked. You definitely did, Lawrence assured her. By speaking up, when something didn't seem right, you helped bring attention to a problem that needed fixing. Just like you always tell us to do, Zara said with a proud smile. Later that evening, as Lawrence prepared for bed, he received an email from Elizabeth Taylor with the subject line, Advisory Board, First Meeting Scheduled. Attached was a detailed agenda that included reviews of customer feedback systems, training programs, and policy revisions. The final item on the agenda caught his attention. Special presentation from Zara and Nia Williams via video. The passenger perspective, through the eyes of young travelers. Lawrence smiled, forwarding the email to his wife with a short note. Our girls are already changing the world. 6 months later, a framed article hung in Lawrence's office. The headline read, National Airways leads industry with new equity initiatives, shows promising results. Beside it was a photograph of the Customer Advisory Board, with Lawrence seated prominently next to Elizabeth Taylor. The incident that began with 2 young girls being unexpectedly downgraded had led to tangible changes, not just in policies and procedures, but in corporate culture and awareness. Other airlines had begun implementing similar initiatives, recognizing the business value of ensuring all passengers felt equally valued and respected. As for Zara and Nia, they had returned to their normal lives of school, friends, and family activities, but something had shifted in their understanding of the world and their place in it. They had learned firsthand the power of speaking up, the importance of questioning unfairness, and the impact that even young voices could have when they refused to be silenced. The next time they flew, on national airways at their own insistence, they were greeted warmly by name at the check-in counter and escorted to their first-class seats without incident. The airline had learned its lesson, and 2 12-year-old girls had helped teach it. As the plane lifted into the sky, Zara looked over at Nia and smiled. Feels good to be where we belong, doesn't it? Nia nodded, reaching for her sister's hand. It sure does, and it feels even better knowing we helped make sure other kids will be treated right too. In that moment, flying high above the clouds, they weren't just passengers on an airplane. They were young changemakers who had discovered their voices and